Hendrick.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I came to this subject originally 10 years as a neutral. A neutral because I have a scientific and engineering background, and I'm usually driven on decisions like this, on issues like this, by the evidence rather than necessarily any political or ideological reasons. And I deeply believe that we need a very varied energy mix for this country, obviously as much renewable as possible. I still think nuclear power has an important role to play because nuclear power nowadays is much safer than it was in the past. And I think in a very unstable world where we still need carbon fuels, where we have producers like Russia, countries around the Middle East and North Africa producing oil and gas, I think it's very important that we have our own indigenous carbon fuels that we can turn to as and when we need to. And therefore I was quite agnostic when it came to the development of shale gas production in Lancashire. Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the House of Commons for producing an excellent paper on the 6th of November on shale gas and fracking, because it's provided a great deal of background and insight into the issue. But the issue until fairly recently hinged around exploratory development in Lancashire. And if I can look back in the past to what's happened in Lancashire, on the 1st of April 2011, getting on for 9 years ago, Blackpool, not far from my constituency in Preston, experienced a seismicity or a tremor of 2.3 on the Richter scale, which was far too hot, far too large. Since then, on the 27th of May 2011, again, nearly 9 years ago, a subsequent tremor of 1.5 on the Richter scale again. Now, we were told that it was due to fluid injection into a fault zone, and that the fracking company Quadrilla had already mapped out parts of Lancashire. They knew exactly where these fault lines were, and therefore that should never occur again. Yeah, of course.
My honourable friend is making a passionate speech, and as a fellow Lancashire MP, I'm sure he hears from his constituents as well about their concerns about earth tremors and earthquakes caused by fracking. Now, in response, of course, the government brought in a traffic light warning system. Many of my constituents are concerned that that traffic light warning system is maintained and stays in place, despite the pressure from some fracking companies. Do his constituents tell him the same?
Yeah, I thank my honourable friend for her contribution, and my constituents do feel the same, and that's why I've risen today to speak on this important subject, because obviously the City of Preston is very close to these fracking sites. If I can move on, Madam Deputy Speaker, the government insisted that controls are in place so that operators will have access to the location of faults before fracking, monitor seismic activity in real time, and stop if a magnitude greater than 0.5 on the Richter scale is detected. 0.5 was the figure that was promised throughout the time that the developers were going through the exploratory phase and the development phase before they turned to production in Lancashire. And it's good to see the Honourable Member for Kingston and Surbiton in his place, who was Secretary of State at the time, because I do recall being present in his office when he made a great number of assurances about how fracking would be conducted in Lancashire, and of course things have turned out rather different than what he said at the time. He was, of course, Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change between 2012 and 2015. And to The Guardian, he made a statement along the following lines, saying that I wanted to make sure that we have tough regulations to tackle things like methane emissions and any pollution, to make sure that we've got things like water sustainability right. He went on to say, if we're going to do fracking, we've got to make sure that it does not hurt our environment and local communities benefited from it. Now, we've yet to see local communities benefit from it. And you know, as with coal, the people in the north dug the coal. It was the people in the south and around London who made the profits from that. I don't want to see the same happen with fracking. and indeed local communities have been subjected since then to much higher levels of seismic activity. If we look in November 2018, there were something like 30 recorded events of seismic activity over a 2-week period with a 1.1 magnitude tremor. Now, that is twice the levels that were indicated by the former Secretary of State or the government at the time or Quadrilla themselves. Now, the people of Lancashire have had enough of this. I came to this as an agnostic, as somebody who wanted to believe that 0.5 was a level that Quadrilla were going to stick to, and unfortunately that's not been the case. And since then, of course, Brian Bapty, head of seismology at the British Geological Survey, has now told journalists at a briefing in 2019 that, sorry, I've got no time, the limit could safely be raised to magnitude 1.5 since this was a similar level to vibrations caused by a heavy bin lorry. Well, I'm sorry, Madam Deputy Speaker, that is not what was promised. And indeed, then since then, we've seen a Times letter of February the 9th, 2019, from 50 geoscientists saying that we should increase it even higher. It's not acceptable, Madam Deputy Speaker, and the people of Lancashire are not willing to accept this.
Nick Herbert.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker.